Okay, the Troy-Bilt has finally been moved from where it's been sitting for 2 months, maybe a month and a half. I got the rear end back in. I had to do some welding on both sides. I found cracks. This machine actually has bolt-in locations, so you can actually put the rear end in a few different locations. It's currently set up at the rear end as close to the front as possible, but it could actually move back by about 2 to 3 inches potentially without having to re-drill. But the shifter may not work. You'd have to lengthen the shifter rod, and the front transaxle support wouldn't work either. But it's just interesting how they built this machine. Also, you'd have to readjust the belt guides. But it's just kind of interesting how they built this. So they built it for many different applications. But next step is to do one of two things. Try and get this engine running, or this engine is going to come off and the 21 horse Briggs & Stratton Craftsman I have will be going on here, but I will put all these covers right here on the 17.5 horsepower covers on that engine. So I'd like to try and get this engine running. That is the goal. It will crank. This machine actually has full brakes and everything, which is good, but it doesn't sound overly good when it cranks. It kind of proved me wrong there. It doesn't normally do that. Normally it cranks and cranks and cranks and will not start. But I guess it decided to prove me wrong. I think it could be a fuel related issue, but this engine really doesn't sound the healthiest either. So I don't know. I haven't really fully decided on what I want to do. This engine's not that hard to change. I could have this engine out and the other one back in probably less than an hour. Everything is very accessible on here, other than the Toro. That one's a nightmare to do the engine on. The bolts are really tight to the frame on the one side. This one here is actually fairly nice and easy. But we'll see. I haven't really decided. I haven't really fully given up on this engine at the moment. The drive is not hooked up. The drive, all the parts for it are sitting right there. I believe the bolt, it's either in the engine or it's in the shed. I better double check on that. As for oil, it's actually got oil. So I did originally want to run the yellow cap on here, which actually would work, but whenever I epoxied the dipstick tube to the little support piece in here, since this engine didn't have the proper supports for this style dipstick, so I had to jerry rig it and MacGyver it quite a bit. It ended up not fitting, but it's not really a huge deal. It's a hoopty. I don't really care about this. My goal is to sell this machine and get back half, or if not all, of what I have into it, which isn't very much. I'm only really into this for a couple $100. That's if it goes with the battery. I'll probably be asking a little bit more. But as of right now, it's moved. It's out of where it's been sitting. That spot can finally dry, and this can be stored somewhere else, since it's now yet again a roller. But I have a few other things I got to get working on before I finish this up. So this one will probably be pushed to the other side of the yard and just left for a little while. And when I get time, I'll come back to it and we'll see if it's the fuel pump. Could it be... I don't think it's a carburetor. I believe that's a brand new carburetor. So it's most likely a fuel coming to it related issue, since this does have a fuel pump. Or it's the engine and it's not making enough vacuum to pull the fuel up to the engine. That is a good possibility. So this intake, all the intake stuff on this is from the engine that was in here, which is that brand new engine I put into the Toro. So I basically left all the intake and carburetor and everything with this machine, and basically swapped it. So I don't think I'm pretty sure this is actually the carburetor that was on this machine as well. I don't recall changing out this carburetor. So I believe I left it all as one piece, unbolted it, swapped the engines, and put it all back together. But there we go. It's up and running, kind of. Have I drove it yet? No. Will I drive it soon? Yes. Just got to figure out why it doesn't want to stay running. So I'll talk to them later. Please keep it redneck like always, and please subscribe, comment.